Welcome to the Love That Guy podcast. We are your hosts. I'm Ronnie Gene Blevins.
And this is Brendan Reynolds.
He got third, all for billing at the end of each picture. That don't really mean much, he would say with a grin. But he held my hand tight when he poured his name out. Only 4 or 5 names down below Errol Flynn.
We are the show that celebrates the journeyman actors, the actors we all know and love, and even though we might not always know their names, we inevitably see them in film and television and think to ourselves, love that guy. If when I grow up I want to be an actor had a face for a 10-year-old Ronnie, it would be the face of our next guest. His performances were the very reason I wanted to be in movies. His first 2 films were with Steven Spielberg and Francis Ford Coppola. We loved him in Tank, we loved him in The Hitcher, we loved him in The Outsiders. We quite literally loved him in Too Many Things to Count. He's an actor, he's a songwriter, but above all, he's a cowboy. And from our perspective, this is the most compelling trait that colors his artistry. Welcome to the show, a Hollywood legend, my friend, C. Thomas Howell. How you doing, buddy?
Wow, who helped you write that?
Impressive, huh?
Right, came to me in a dream.
I'm that.
Hey, man, it's all true. It's all true.
It's good to see you in your fancy podcast.
Hey, man, you know, about 20 years ago, long before we met, I remember listening, before podcasts were a thing, Tommy had a show with Kirk Fox on terrestrial radio.
Oh, nice.
Kind of similar thing, but it was so compelling. And I had moved out here just a few years prior, and it was like he interviewed all these cool people, man.
Yeah, that's cool.
Well, back then it was just called radio.
Right.
Pre-podcast.
Right. And you think about it, if that would have been a podcast and you would have started back then, you would have been like the OG originator of podcasts and probably be like,
yeah. You know, I thank God that didn't happen. You know, as you look back on your life, you have things that you get into that you don't understand why. But then when you look back, it was such great training for me. I think I did that show for 2 years, every Sunday for 4 hours. And I remember my very first show, I showed up with my 4 hours prepared. I burnt through that in about 10 minutes.
Yeah.
I had never felt fear like that in my life. You know, I felt completely naked and unprepared. And that really got me up on my feet. That 2 years of, you know, when you do a weekly show and are you guys weekly?
We're bi-monthly, but we're toying with the idea of doing it.
When it's weekly, when I was doing a Sunday show, it was freaking Sunday every day, man. It was like, you know, you didn't have that 6-day break. It was just, it felt like always Sunday. And then guests cancel. You know how it is.
Yeah.
Just trying to recognize it. And that's not what we get into this for. We get into it actual moment for this, the exchange.
Right.
But people don't understand the prep and the phone calls and the, well, do you know him? I think I know him. I think I got a number on him. Well, listen, I got it. But I can do that. I mean, it just, you know how it is. It's impossible. And I'm in the middle of it too. You know, we can talk about it later, but I've sort of shifted gears and got into music, and that's led to other things. And I'm, you know, having to do a lot of sous chef. And I like to cook, man. I don't want to sous chef.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Well, support. Yeah, I do want to, that's where I want to. Yeah, that's where I want to. That's where we want to evolve into, no doubt, because I am in love with your new album, American songwriter. But if you'll indulge me just a little bit of origin story, and I know that it goes back over 4 decades, so forgive me. But you are beloved. I love you. Everyone loves you. So indulge me. I gotta ask this question. Where does a 19-year-old? You know, I grew up watching these movies, like I said, right? The Hitcher, you know, was one of them. And back then we only had like a couple of. There's really like maybe it was like TBS and HBO, right? And we were being
and what? and VHS and beta.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But so we were, they were showing these movies over and over again, like The Hitcher, like Soulman. And, I know you shot this later, but like Breaking the Rules, a completely underrated movie. But like, how does I can understand, why a 55-year-old Tommy Howell is a great actor, because you are a great actor, but you've had all this life experience. But how does a 19-year-old kid go toe-to-toe with Rutger Hauer and find the pathology and the emotional inner life to be, you're kind of just flying blind, right? You obviously don't have a technique.
Yeah.
Well, that's kind of a loaded question, because you picked the film that up until that point I had done a lot of things, but I hadn't really carried a movie alone, and I hadn't been surrounded by award-winning actors, whether it's, Jennifer Jason Leigh, who's been nominated multiple times for Academy Awards, Jeffrey DeMunn, who has won many awards, including a Tony or two,
right?
And Rush was, at that time, he had a monopoly on the villains that, unlike anybody else, he was really a poet disguised as this dust devil in the
right.
He really put the fear of God into production, and he drove his motorhome around and didn't let anybody in it, and didn't really speak to too many people. But for whatever reason, he really took care of me. That was the experience that I walked away from when I knew I was going to be a lifer.
Mm-hmm.
It'd been pretty easy for me as a kid. I grew up on movie sets. My daddy is a stunt man and still a stunt coordinator today. And, going to work with him at a very young age, he was a single parent. And so hanging out on sets was normal. This wasn't a dream for me that I achieved one day after going to drama school and reached my goals. This was lunch pail work for me.
Right.
I that's every day and understood what it was like to be a part of the crew. I've been a member of SAG since I was 6 years old. I'm 56.
Wow.
So I got
Unreal.
That's crazy.
In SAG, my first piece was a little thing that I did with Brian Keith, and it was called Little People, and he played a pediatrician over in Hawaii, and I was over there with my mama, who was also in the business. So I was hanging around on the set there, and I got cast as a kid that had an earache and had a few scenes with Brian Keith, and that was the beginning of it. But it wasn't foreign or new or even special. It was appropriate and comfortable and home. So that just led me to this world of commercials and television. I did a thing with Melora Hardin, who was one of the stars of The Office, when I was 10 years old. We did this thing called, God dang, what was that called? It was about a black horse, and it was TV, and it was with me and Melora Hardin. We were like 10 and 11 years old. Then I was 18. We did Soulman together.
Yep.
And she moved on to be incredible in The Office.
Mm-hmm.
And the point is, for me growing up and being surrounded by it, it did a couple things. There was easy access for me, and it's also an interesting space, because by the time I was 15, I'd already worked with Coppola and Spielberg.
Right.
Crazy.
It's fucking downhill from there, boys.
That's an early peak.
It's tough, and I struggled at a young age, really trying to figure out who I was, and when you're 14, 15 years old, 16 years old, those are painful times in our lives, as you reflect.
Yep.
really trying to, you know, I mean, I remember when I was 16, I couldn't believe how dumb my dad was, you know?
Right.
And by the time I was 21, I couldn't believe how much he had learned.
Right.
I couldn't be told, you know, I had done just enough and earned enough money to have all the answers. You know, we didn't have that little device in our pocket that really gave us all the answers. I really thought I had it sorted out, you know, and that was, it gave me some freedom, and it gave me, you know, I was always sort of a confident kid because I grew up in the world of rodeo, and
Right.
I had a lot of success in the arena at a young age. So like, that's what I was going to do. I planned on being a professional cowboy. In 1979, 1980, 1981, I was California State junior all-around champion, was riding bulls and roping calves and team roping and cowboying, and grew up doing that. So,
Right.
you know, walking into a room with Steven Spielberg or sitting down and looking at somebody like Rutger Hauer wasn't quite as intimidating for me personally, because I knew I was going to go get on a 2,000-pound bull that weekend. And,
Wow.
Right.
you know, did you feel pressure? You know, going in and auditioning when I was a kid, there was no pressure. You know, pressure to me was entering a rodeo that cost me $100 when I had 15 in my pocket. You know, that pressure, you had to win. So this was all a gift to me, hanging out on a set.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, that's great.
E.T. was spectacular. You know, it had a circus quality, but not in a negative sense. I'm talking about in a fantastical sense. It was like there was stuff to see, man. Puppetry and little people and you know, spaceships and fantastic performances, and just it was amazing. I mean, Spielberg in 1980, 81, I guess it was. I guess
released
81.
in 82. Yeah.
I think we shot in 81.
Yeah.
So he had this trailer that he pulled around with him to all these locations, just filled with video games at the time. I think it was like Missile Command and Asteroid.
Nice.
Commando.
Stuff. But for us, it was, you know, Nirvana. So he really would get us together, and we weren't allowed to read the script, right? I never read the script. To this day, I've never read that script. I would be handed pages the day before, and I would be told, you know, prep these. And on that day, he'd get us before we go off to school, and he'd say, listen, we're going to start this scene at 10 o'clock. And if we can get it done by 12 o'clock, I'm going to let you go on the arcade from 12 o'clock to 12:30.
That's great.
And man, we would be like prepped and ready to go. And by 12 o'clock, we were in the arcade, you know, and that's how he communicated with us. And he was also really comfortable with children.
Right.
And I think E.T. wasn't an accident. You know, there was something I think that really he connected with those kids. And I remember being there and watching these improvs happen. And first time, like, oh, you can do that. You know,
wow.
Having that sort of presented to me through Steven was an interesting.
Amazing.
Yeah, right. Because you don't know. You're like that. Well, that's breaking a rule, right? You know what I mean? But,
well, it says to say this, right? I mean, I come from world of stuntman. You know, man. My dad was like, just show up on time, man, and shut up. That was my right. So I had to figure it out on my own, and it took me a while, you know. And jumping back to what got us to this point, which was, how does one, you know, handle himself in the face of Rutger Hauer and Jennifer Jason Leigh in a film like The Hitcher? Well, you know, one of the best lessons I was taught, that I have been taught in the business, and I learned from every single experience, Ronnie. You know, you learn from one and you carry it to the next, man, and you see those notes and you put them in your pocket.
Yep.
You plant those seeds and you grow, and some may call it robbing, some may call it stealing. I just call it being a really great artist. And you learn and expand. And I'll never forget, about 3-4 weeks into the Hitcher, Rutger invited me to come have some lunch inside of his trailer, right? And that was a big deal. Nobody had been in there, and he was a different cat and didn't say a whole lot. He was intimidating as hell. And I remember the first time I shook his hand, it was like shaking a baseball mitt. I mean, it just
Yeah.
followed my little paw, And we went in and we sat down, and he smoked. He chain smoked filterless cigarettes, It was a cloud of smoke in that thing.
Yeah.
He was staring at the plate, and I was sort of sheepishly eating, and nobody said anything for a solid 15 minutes. And finally, just out of fear, I thought I'd muster up a little small talk, man. And I start stuttering my way through a dumb sentence like, Rutger, they say you're one of the greatest bad guys ever. What's your secret, right?
Right.
And he looked at me for what felt like an eternity, and he's picking some tobacco out of his teeth, and he exhales and blows some smoke in my face and hisses in that Dutch accent. I don't play bad guys.
Right?
He is a bad guy.
Well,
or is he? Is he?
Right.
Every bad guy's the hero of his own story, right?
There you go. Yeah.
Well, I have a part 2 to this.
No, sorry.
And because there was a lesson for me here. And of course, I didn't understand what the hell at 17 that meant. You don't understand irony. You don't understand loss and pain.
Mm-hmm.
You don't understand alimony. You don't understand this shit when you're a kid. That stuff comes. I mean, look what happened to Tiger Woods, right? Life. And as an actor, I think our work becomes better when those pages become wrinkled and burnt on the edges, right?
100.
And we start to really, and I disagreed with Jack Nicholson 100 years ago when I was a kid. And he was on the cover of Rolling Stone, and he said something, it takes 25 years before you become a good actor. And I was like, oh man, what do you know? Well, I have so many performances where you see me trying hard and wanting to be liked and paying the price on film because I was trying to please a lot of other people.
Yeah.
When I started raising that bar high for myself and started pleasing myself and not caring about playing the game and pleasing other people and going to directors and going to producers and asking them if they like what they're seeing or wondering, is it okay? I don't ask. I know. Mm-hmm. That's the difference. So when I stopped doing that crap, my game changed.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Getting back to the Rutger moment, because this is important. For me, it was important as an artist. And if there's anybody else listening, that they might find something here. But he told me I don't play bad guys. And that scared the hell out of me. So I backed out of there slowly. And that rattled around in my head for 20 years, 20 some odd years. Probably 25 years. And I, struggled through my 20s, really. I had a real good teen run, got into my 20s and lost into that. Are you a boy? Are you a man? And took some roles that I probably shouldn't have taken. And it was a tough time for me for a while. And I had an opportunity to kind of reinvent myself in the world of television, because when I was growing up, we didn't do TV, we did film.
Right.
And when I was growing up, we didn't have movies that went straight to video or cable.
Right.
Everything was an event. Everything was a red carpet event. We had limousines and light bulbs and premieres, Mm-hmm. Now you're lucky if you get a copy of the movie, right? So
right.
It's just a different world. And for me, reinventing myself as an artist has been something that I've really needed to do over the years to be able to stay in the business, because otherwise you'll get relegated to roles on networks where you're pretty much just playing the parent of something that you probably don't feel so great about when you're driving home, right?
100%.
And that ends up putting a lot of really talented people that I've worked with in a jaded, bitter state. And I just didn't want that to happen to me. You know, I've over my 50 years of doing this, if I take a job, I give you my all.
Yep.
Otherwise I don't take it. I don't take a job and hate the fact that I'm running from a Martian on sci-fi right now and I shouldn't be doing this. And let me tell you something. I've worked with the best and I have worked with the worst.
Amazing.
I've learned a hell of a lot more when I was running from Martians and hating my position in life.
Yeah.
Wondering why I wasn't somewhere else and forced to take some self-inventory, trying to raise 3 kids and trying to pay my bills and struggling. That I learned a hell of a lot more doing that than I did sitting around on the set of Spider-Man waiting to work for months at a time, wondering what was going on and really not being that engaged.
Yep.
And
Sure.
yeah, I was getting paid, but I wasn't really forced to grow. And I think a lot of actors get real comfortable and forget what got them there. And they lose that part of themselves. They lose that authentic part of themselves that got them there.
Yeah.
And I see it all the time. And, you know, there's a lot of people that look at me and they're like, dude, what the fuck happened to Pony Boy, man? What are you doing? You know, I get a lot of people on my social or when I appear and they're like, wow, man. You know, I say, hey, look, I struggled in Hollywood and I try to please a lot of people. But one thing I don't want to be is fake. I have a hard time looking at some of these actors that I grew up with and loved and admired. And I see their faces filled with stuff and hair dye and all kinds of stuff going on. And God bless it, that's your thing. I'm not trying to say it's a bad thing. I'm just saying, if I'm watching you in a film and you're running through the jungle looking like that, you want me to believe that?
That's a stretch.
I can't support it.
Yeah.
I can't. I feel like there's a line that, okay, you know, you doing something that you got to be 30 years younger. I'm in, man. You know, shave it off, me up, help me out, spackle, makeup. I'm in. But we're acting, right? That's part of the game.
Right.
Living life and walking by the mirror and checking yourself out and going, oh, I need to get that done is just a reflection of where we are at in society.
100%.
You know,
Yeah.
I don't have a lot going on and a little too much money in their pocket.
Yeah.
You get out here where I live, man, we got some chores. We ain't worried about goddamn wrinkles. Dude,
God's country.
Now, when you're chopping wood and carrying water, you get down to the basics and we're growing things out here and feeding the animals and doing chores. We're not worried about that. And that just leads to more authentic work.
100%.
For sure. Yeah.
It feeds itself. And so I had to step away from that whole world. But man, I'm sorry I went down this rabbit hole.
No, I love it.
It's
It's all beautiful.
It's great.
It's all beautiful. And the funny thing when I hear these reactions to you, I think to myself, well, the Pony Boy and the so on and so forth was like the affectation. The cowboy was always the genuine article. And I think when you hear these so many of your peers who had this incredible stardom as you did at an early age, they had such a bumpy road and they couldn't find their way out. But I can't help but think this kind of this cowboy ethos was what guided you through, right? Like prevented you from going down that road.
Yeah, having a bull riding stuntman father, you know, it gives you a different perspective on life.
Yep.
You know, it really, back then we didn't have all these labels, Ronnie. You know what I mean? If you didn't pay attention, you didn't have, any disorders. You got a boot in the ass, and suddenly you were comprehending shit, man. It was just
That's amazing how that worked.
So today we call 911 when that happens. But
Right.
I grew up with a guy that's old school. You know, he's my father is a man's man. You know, he's a cowboy, shakes your hand, says 2 weeks in advance, I'll see you at 4:00 on Thursday the 18th. He's there at 3:30 and wondering why you ain't there. And you didn't talk, and there was no text, and there was no man. You know, that's how it used to be, right? Like where I'm from, when you got to cut down a tree and you ask for help, people show up with coolers and barbecues and backhoes, and they're like, oh, we're going to help. When you're in LA, you can't get a ride to the airport.
Sad.
You will feel bad now. You won't even ask. You just will Uber yourself.
Yeah,
you won't
exactly.
Ask.
The guilt.
That's BS, bro.
Yeah.
That's BS. Call me up. I'm there to pick you up. You need a ride? I'm there to take you. That don't happen anymore. You know, and it's our laws. It's our laws because it just creates separation. It doesn't create closeness, you know?
Yeah.
And that's
truth.
That's really what we're trying to do as artists.
Yep.
You know, and we're trying to do whether we're acting or we're writing songs and singing. And that, you know, has been a beautiful journey in its own for me. And if it wasn't for acting, I wouldn't know to do this.
Well,
you know, and
I think that, well, piggybacking on the notion of help, you know, a couple years ago, I reached out to Tommy, and even though we hadn't spoken in a few years, and I said, brother, I'm in help. I'm about to do this. I say Western. It's a Civil War drama. And he's like, well, can you ride? Because I was meant to be on a horse and doing some serious horse work. And I go, yeah. Well, you know, I rode a few. He goes, okay, so you can't ride. He's like, so you got to.
We all can ride if there's a part involved, right? We all can ride.
Right, like the wind. So he instructs me. Tommy has a cousin. Well, he has so many people he could have reached out to. Right. The first one that came to his mind was he has your cousin's husband, right?
Yeah. Heather.
Yeah. Heather and who?
Dale Gibson.
Dale Gibson, right. And I go out to Dale's place, and I only had about a week, man, and he trained me up. And I'm telling you, if it would not have been for Dale and Tommy, I would have been fired off this movie. Wow. Because the expectation of what we had to do, and Emancipation is a movie I'm talking about, was, you know, Anton Fuqua, we had stuntmen, sure, and they did everything. He wanted us to do everything that they did. Yeah. And it was rocky.
Scary spot, you know. I have a story that wasn't that had sort of a tragic ending to it that involved horses on a set, and I was had the absolute pleasure of playing the son of the late great Oliver Reed in the last installment of the Musketeer movies, the 3 Musketeer movies with Michael York and Richard Chamberlain and Frank Finley and Roy Kinnear. And Roy played the servant Planchet, who was also the father of Veruca Salt and Charlie and the Chocolate Factory.
Right.
Yes, it's the golden egg, right? That guy. So 1988, we're in Spain, and we're watching the Olympics, and he comes to my place, and I cook him a steak, and we get up to crack at dawn, and we got to go to Toledo, Spain, and it's about an hour and a half away from where we got to get to. So there's a shot that is sunrise, and they want us kind of galloping across this cobblestone bridge through the gates of what's considered, you know, Paris at the time. And we get there, and the director and the stunt coordinator are having a bit of a thing, because the stunt coordinator is saying that, you know, it's a little dangerous, and he doesn't want us to do it because the cobblestones are slick and the horses have shoes, and it's just not a thing that he feels the actors should be doing. Well, they kept us there all day, and they decided they would sprinkle some sand and some straw on this bridge, and they sent us across. And the night before, I'm having a steak with Roy, and he says to me, you know, Tommy, I'm petrified to ride. I don't want to get on this horse. And the last time I was on a horse was when it was 25 years ago when we were here in Spain, and we were doing the second installment of the Three Musketeer movies, and I fell off and broke my leg.
Shit.
He said, "I've had a horse since, and I'm petrified." Well, here we are, and he's doesn't want to do it. They send me out first, so I'm trying to gauge a pretty decent pace. And I get across, and I pull my horse up, and I watch about 4 or 5 of them come, the musketeers, followed by their trusty servant, Planchet. And he gets 3/4 of the way across. His horse slips, and he falls. Well, it was tragic because he ended up passing away that evening in the hospital.
The
we
horse?
Get a phone. No, Roy.
Oh my God.
Man.
He had 2 beautiful children, still does. His son, Rory Kinnear, is an incredible actor. He was in a couple Bond movies, and a great series. What's that? Penny, that
Penny
horror.
Penny Dreadful, yeah.
Penny Dreadful, man. He's fantastic in that. He's fantastic in it. And he was Roy, who passed away, was best friends with Richard Lester, the director, who also directed the great Beatles, Hard Day's Night. And, it put him into a quandary. Anyway, we shut down for a minute, ended up doubling him a little bit and getting around it and writing his character out when they could. But of course, it all went into probate and was a nightmare, the whole thing for everybody involved.
Yeah.
And the point is, right? And ask Alec Baldwin, shit goes. And
Right.
you think it's safe and you think everything's okay, and it's you never know. You never know, especially on sets. I've seen crazy things happen, and when at least you had a foundation, right there, you could get on. At least, you know what I mean? It's like a lot of times, and here's what I love about at least when I'm approaching something all the time, I may not know what the hell I'm going to do, but I know what I'm not going to do, and that gives me a good, leg up on things.
Yeah.
So,
and I had a hell of a good, Dash was our stunt coordinator. And and because I claimed, coming working with Dell, you know what I mean? I think I got a little grace, but, yeah, man, I'm sorry, man. So this actor expresses to you the night before that he is afraid to get on a horse. And then the next day, dies from injuries he sustained on the horse.
Was originally shot down, and they made some safety precautions, which was a joke.
Jesus.
And straw and sand and horse hooves and metal shoes don't make for better footing. And it's a tragic story, man. It's a tragic story.
Yeah. And you're right.
I was shocked when I got the call.
So sorry.
It's rough.
Last dinner, and I mean, I was a kid. I was 20. I was 21 years old, and I just come off a Franco Zeffirelli movie with Elizabeth Taylor, and working in Rome for 6 months. I stepped over there and go home, and I'm working with Oliver Reed, who was just amazing guy. I got some great stories about him. And there I was, living the life, man. I was 21 years old, and that took place. And that was I had another 4 weeks to go to kind of wrap things up. And that was a long 4 weeks, man.
Oh, I'm so sorry you had to go through that. I'm so sorry for his family, man.
Terrible.
You worked with these great older American actors, elder statesmen, and then you become one of these guys. But, you work with like James Garner, Rutger Hauer, Patrick Swayze. And I'm wondering, you work with
Harry Dean.
The great Harry Dean Stanton. I remember Tommy tells us this story, and I hope I'm not speaking out of school, but you told this story of how Harry was struggling a little bit on one day you guys worked. Do you remember this story?
Well, Reddawn was, as far as the elements were concerned, the weather and location, that was one of the toughest experiences that I had gone through. I mean, it was brutal. It was cold. And if you're exterior nights during winter, north of Taos, up in those mountains up there, I mean, that's skiing country. They ski up there, man. And that's where we were. And I mean, there were vehicles sliding off roads, and I think, and true story, I think we lost part of the catering team that somebody was killed. Again.
Wow. Jeez.
I to and from work on that thing. And of course, when you're 16 years old, man, you're bulletproof, right? Yeah. So I never ever thought of there being any issues at hand. And I was also raised by a stunt guy, and their whole creed is, I mean, they hit the ground, they're drug off, and they're like, bring in the actor,
Right. Right.
So my father, just sort of, that's how I was taught. Like I said, I wasn't classically trained. I did a lot of my film work because I was a stunt kid. I actually got ET to ride the bikes, and I would. 2 minutes for an ET story, real quick.
Oh, please,
yeah, of course.
So I get picked up at high school, and I'm 13 or something, turned 14, and this would happen a lot. Dad would just pick me up and say, "We got a meeting today," and say, "Okay." And, he didn't tell me who it is or what it is. He says, "You got to smoke a cigarette." And all right. Yeah. Marlboros and some matches. And he says, "We got about 25 minutes. You need to figure out how to light that." And I was like, "Oh, all right." So I'm struggling, and we get down there, we park, and we go walking into this meeting, and nobody's read a script or anything. And I walk into this room, and there's like 6 dudes that all look like John Stamos. They got dark,
Greek guys.
Feathered. I'm looking at my dad, I got like some old ball cap on, and I'm just like, one of these things is not like the other. I ain't gonna get this. They want one of them boys. Let's go. And he's like, "No, just wait." And he was crafty. My father's still shrewd and crafty, street-wise cowboy. Ones you gotta watch out for.
Right.
Yeah.
So we wait one at a time. Everybody goes, and they come and go. And then it's my turn. And I go in. And there's Kathleen Kennedy and Frank Marshall and Marcy Layoff, casting people, a couple other suits from the studio, and Steven Spielberg, and this chair with a light on it. And I'm sitting there and going through questions, and he's, digging the fact that my dad is a stunt man, and that I could ride the bike, and I'm like, rodeo, the bike ain't nothing. We got that. And we get to the cigarette part, and it's like, "How do you feel about smoking?" Well, fish out this pack of cigarette, pull out bent Marlboro that does a 90-degree turn up, just matches up these things. I go, you got the part right. So I was in ET, and that was, an accumulation of a few things. But basically, because my father was smart enough to give me that little leg up and just make the difference, when you leave, and I didn't know it, but he closed the deal for me. And that was Dad, that was Dad. And he had the same influence on the outsiders as well, because back in the day, I was 14. He took me to court where I enrolled and became one of the very first minors that were what's known as the Emancipation Act. There,
Okay.
you can emancipate yourself by, you know, your parents' okay. And I signed these documents, which basically meant that I was able to work as an adult.
Wow.
And if I case, I'd be tried as an adult as well.
Right.
But we beat the California state child labor laws. And a lot of people don't know that, but that enabled the production to go ahead and work me like an adult on the Outsiders. And they did. They did. So,
so it's a different experience. Your experience on Outsiders is radically different than
E.T.
Yeah. You'd say.
Yeah. The Outsiders was, you go in there, Ronnie, I went in, I was on, a scaled contract, right? And I was on a forced call for like 24 days in a row. So a lot of people don't know what that means, but there's penalties come along with when you get called in earlier than what your contracted SAG agreed turnaround. There's a minimum when you sign up. You go to work, you get like 12 hours before you got to come back the next day or whatever. And if they bring you in earlier than that, there's a penalty to pay. And production doesn't even like to do that one day.
Right.
They did it 24 days in a row.
Crazy.
And what does that mean? Well, I was 15, right? Just being worked like a dog. And I made some money. I never complained. And being on the set was like, it was painful to go home anyway. I mean, we slept, but being on the set is where it all was going down, right? We were fed and we were wearing the clothes we were told to wear. We were saying what we were told to say and doing what we were told to do. It was the greatest gig ever, It was a great cast and everybody loved being there. And Coppola had this incredible sense. A lot of people ask, what it was like. And then I can say the same for Steven as well, but a lot of times you'll work with a director that is just incredible technically. They come from a technical background. They know how to work the camera and they tell a story with the camera and effects. They're just great with that. And a lot of guys are just incredible artistically. They paint, they know the words and understand relationships and they're great communicators. And they work that way, but they don't understand the technical side of it at all, man. They just kind of leave that the DP, right?
Right.
But the greats really understand both.
Yeah.
And that's what I found when I'm working with somebody like Coppola or which I worked with when I was a kid. I'd love to work with him again, but even somebody that probably my favorite director I've ever worked with came out of television. There's a guy named Chris Chulak. You ever work with Chris Chulak, Ronnie?
Well, yeah, on Southland, for sure.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
All right, man. I forgot you did that with us. So Southland,
You were fantastic in Southland, by the way.
And I mean, that was probably my favorite role I've ever had.
Oh, wow. Nice.
Other than what I just did, my latest role, which I'm really proud of, is a role in a thing called Obliterated. That's a new series for Netflix that I'm one of the stars of, and it comes out the end of fall.
Huge.
And it's by the Cobra Kai. And it's just an epic story that I'm so proud of, man. It's
great.
Amazing.
To me, it's probably my favorite. And I haven't seen it, but walking away from it, it's probably my favorite work that I've done.
Well,
that's saying.
When I think about you, I think of Michael Corleone, right? Whenever I try to get out, they pull me back in, right?
Yeah.
Because there's something about like you going off and doing music and saying, okay, this is where my artistic energy is going to be focused now. It kind of creates this sexy indifference, don't you find? Because after you did that, they're like, Tommy, come back.
Yeah. They won't let you go.
Well, you understand, because I've told that story. You understand Hollywood's a fickle bitch.
Right.
You can court her and send her flowers and she'll tell you to get the hell out.
Right.
The second you stop calling, she comes a knocking. and I don't understand it, but I never got a job walking into the room telling somebody how much I love the script and how much I'd love to be a part of it.
That's crazy.
I have never. I have gotten all my jobs walking in there, being prepared, not saying nothing, banging it out, and leaving like I got some real shit to do.
Amazing.
And man, I'll never forget going to Criminal Minds. I played the role called George Foyet, the Reaper, and he's a serial killer. And I had to go in to audition. And I had a flashback to what Rutger Hauer said to me when I was 17. I was sitting in this trailer and we were talking about this. And he said, I don't play bad guys. Well, this was to play a pretty vicious serial killer. And I really thought about what he had said. And I finally I was old enough to really get it. And I was excited because I made the connection of what he meant. You know, Rutger's power was finding the humanity in whatever role he played and not making the choice to be bigger than or better than whoever he was working with. Meaning he didn't run through a hailstorm of bullets because he knew he didn't die until page 90. Like you'll see a lot of these clowns do.
Yep.
And it takes me right out of the story when you see somebody not playing the reality of what would be happening, but they're playing the end game of where they're going. And Rutger didn't do that. Rutger had this incredible ability to take a very broken and flawed character, inject him with humanity, do horrible things from a place of good, and make you love him while you were hating him.
Right.
That's
beautiful.
Yeah.
Deep shit, man.
Yeah, it is.
He was amazing.
Yeah,
Blade
it
Runner.
is. Yeah. Unbelievable.
So,
yeah.
For me, I understood this when I went in, and I really wanted this opportunity to, for the first time, reinvent myself because nobody had given me a chance to play a bad guy. And, you know, this was the first time I had that shot, and it was a well-written role, but I knew that if I was going to go in and twist my mustache and, you know, play this character of what I think a bad guy should be, that there'd be no chance in hell that would work.
Yep.
And I really found something for myself and connected to that piece and made the choice to not play a bad guy as Rutger, to play a guy that was a good guy that just did horrifying things. And that has a real effect on an audience. And I have many people that come up to me and go, oh my God, you're a psycho and blah, blah, blah. So, well, you know, you gotta watch it again because I'm really not.
Right.
He's pretty grounded and communicative and calculating and thoughtful. And that's some scary ass shit when you're dealing with, you know, as opposed to somebody that's just fearless and reckless, right? And we've seen, and Rutger really taught me that in that moment. And I didn't know that. But that role as the Reaper for me was a real departure from a 15-year struggle that I had dealt with and faced maybe walking away from the business a few times just because I wasn't satisfied with the work that I was doing. And that was a catapult that really changed my career because I did that in Southland all at the same time, but I made a real conscious effort to play those type of roles. You know, I went from trying to, man, playing the lead guy is so effing boring. It's just,
it's a lot of work too, I'm sure.
It's like I'd rather come in 2 days a week, have the badass role, smash it out, everybody loves you, and you're gone, man. And you're back to, it's just, it's like like Dewey in Southland, I have a similar character in Obliterated. And Obliterated is awesome, by the way. It's like 24 meets The Hangover.
Wow.
So
Nice.
I'm a part of this elite team that's hired to go locate this dirty nuke that's being traded in the black market, and they find it outside of Vegas. We do 8 episodes, and I play the bomb tech. So we find the bomb halfway through episode 1. Boom, I dismantle it. I go ahead and spike my team with some acid that their drinks, and everybody's spaced out.
Amazing.
And we get a phone call 2 hours later. Wrong bomb, man. That was the decoy. You got 5 hours to find the real bomb.
That's great.
Everybody's hammered out of their mind, and we got to go to work.
Oh no.
And story, and it's just, it was so great to do.
When does this come out?
It's
I
a
can't wait
comedy,
to
I'm
watch it.
assuming.
Like fall.
Okay,
And
nice.
I'm ADR on it now. We're doing, I'm doing all the ADR, and I'm, who walks away from ADR going, holy crap, this is really epic. It's just fun to be a part of something that you really, and listen, it ain't for everybody. We offend a lot of things, man.
Right.
So
Right.
Perfect.
Right.
and then, nobody has a damn sense of humor anymore. It's just like, oh my God, enough already.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we hit everybody, so it's fair game. We didn't leave anybody out, and it's one of the most fun casts that I've worked with, and I think people are gonna be surprised. It's R-rated comedy with just epic action, right?
Oh man,
Yeah,
I
you need a dose of
I
that.
literally cannot wait to
Yeah,
see
that
this.
sounds, that sounds fun.
So I want to talk. I know we don't have a lot of time with you, but I want to talk real quick about your new album, American Storyteller.
Yeah.
I fucking love it, man. I tell you what, these songs like 88 and A Hell of Life, man, you're talking some inside baseball stuff there. There's a line of there, I was like, oh wow, okay. And you know which line I'm talking about, I think. Anyway, it's just a great song, great music. And I want to know for you, because I know you've gotten just so reinvigorated with the live music. What happens being live on a stage? What do you get from that experience that you don't necessarily get between action and cut?
That's good.
Well, first of all, I'm not playing a character. I'm not wearing makeup and hiding behind scenes that are written for me. So there's a line that once you step across, there's no going back, right? And you have to understand, I've only been doing this for 2 years, Ronnie. I've never played music. I never played the guitar. I never wrote a song. I grew up in a musicless home. So when COVID hit, I knew I didn't want to get on the other side of that, just, drinking and having nothing happening. So I picked up a guitar and I started plucking some chords out with the intention of a film that I want to do. That's kind of, my version of what, just for this conversation, what, Tender Mercies might have done for Robert Duvall.
Right.
But I don't know, that records an album and it blows up and he walks away from the business to go train horses. And it's a story that I want to tell from my heart. And I could do the cowboy and stuff, but I couldn't do the music side of it. And so my intention was to do that, start out and give myself a couple of years to learn how to play the guitar a little bit. And lo and behold, man, I discovered this Pandora's box that just exploded inside of me. And I realized I had a knack for writing songs. A knack. It ain't for everybody, right? But I knew that I could, this 2-hour format that I was trained in for 40 years by the best storytellers in all of our planet. Was a pretty smooth transition into a 2-minute format. You still have a beginning, a middle, and an end. And with the type of songs that I wanted to write, and I'm a storyteller. I'm not a pop guy. I probably don't really write songs that are meant for radio, but I write music and songs that I think have a quality and a sound that are somewhat cool and fun. And We got kind of a southern rock vibe, a little bit of a Texas thunder vibe with a little bit of a mountain music vibe. You know, we've got the mandolin and harmonica, and
Cool.
it's funny. We went and played the Whiskey a Go Go in Hollywood the other
right down
night.
the
We were
street.
sold
Yeah.
there. Amazing time, and I watched about 5 people come up and ask my boy on the mandolin, "What is that? What is that instrument?" You know, and he's like, "Well, this is a mandolin." And like, they're amazed. My guys are amazed that we're out there and they're going, they don't know what the hell this is. I said, well,
Bro, it's
Hollywood. That's why we wanted to come and kind of bring that aspect to it. And we try to bring some authenticity, and I speak my mind, and it gives me an opportunity to not have to listen, on a set. I mean, back in the day, I was the first one late at night to crack a joke and we'd all laugh and get over the hump there, but not anymore, man. You shut up and you're quiet there and you're ready to go, and there's no joking. There's no eating or fraternizing at lunch. You're in your trailer with your box lunch, man, and you're eating alone, smoking on your phone. That's life on a set these days. It didn't used to.
It's sad.
So, for me, music really gave me the opportunity to not have to go please everybody else for a job. I'm now just signed a 48 show deal here at the City Winery in Nashville. I'm going to play every Friday night there. I'm bringing in all my friends. We're making our big announcement on Monday.
Congrats, brilliant.
That's great. Congrats, yeah.
Well,
Charlie Sheen and the cast of E.T. and my buddy Kevin Dillon. Just people are going to come in. So Ronnie, we got musical guests that are off the chart. And
Kevin's girl is a singer as well, Amy, right? She's yeah.
I didn't know that. I'm glad you told me that.
Yeah. Well, I grew up with, my heroes were John Prine, Jerry Jeff Walker, Willie Nelson.
Townes Van Sant.
Yeah, Townes Van Sant.
I'm living in the world of Nashville, so I'm hanging out with all these people that worked with those guys. Like the guy that produced my album is Dean Miller, Roger Miller's son. He's got miles and miles of stories about Roger. And I'm now just submerged in the history of Nashville and the music here. And, for me, it wasn't a fake step. I grew up cowboy, and so I can write a song about a horse or a cowboy, and it will have some weight to it. At least I hope. That's what I'm trying to do.
Yeah,
I got some songs, like you said, 88, and even hell of a lot of song about my own career, and there's
good.
Fun moments in that. And I wrote that song because a lot of actors that went before me that are cutting music, they didn't make it easy. They don't want to talk about their career, and they don't this and they don't that. There's all these limitations. For me, man, I'm going out there saying, I want audience participation. I want questions. It makes for a better show. So I said, let's write a song about our career, man, and let's invite them into our life. I'm not trying to deny it. It's all inclusive, man. It's all part of it.
Yeah. Well, I love it, man. And it has, like you say, it's beautifully produced. It has everything on the spectrum, whether it's 88 Hell of a Life, which it kind of, am I crazy for thinking there's a little bit of Kid Rock vibes in there? The Hell of a Life.
I hope. It's like,
and then you got Rose Hill, which like these beautiful, it's just a fucking great album, man. I'm so happy for you.
Check it out.
And I hope the accumulation of all this is that you're ready to tackle that movie soon. You'll
have to come play a part.
All right, man.
Nice.
Well, brother, our time with you is up, but I want to thank you.
Great talk. I appreciate you letting me just blab, man. We went down a few rabbit holes, and I hope there was some interesting stuff there. But
all of it.
It was great.
I love you, and thank you guys for letting me be here. Okay.
Thank
I love you,
Tommy.
my brother.
We appreciate you.
I can't wait to see what you do. You do next. I'm going to come out and see your show. And right on, man. Have a great week, my brother.
Before we go, the listeners, if you get a chance, go to TommyHowellMusic.com. Check us out, and come see a show in Nashville. And we tour a lot. If we come, to your city, we hope you come out and see us. Throw your arms around.
And check out the new album, American Storyteller. It's phenomenal. Yeah. All right, my brother. Thank you, buddy.
Bye now.
Thanks, Tom.
Bye-bye.